All right, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you got questions, go ahead and post them. It should be below the video. If you're on a smaller screen like a phone, if you're on a larger screen like a computer, it should be to the right of the video. All right, so we'll start here with Marcel. Says I start the downswing with the weight shift to the left, and then I squat down in my downswing. Should I do this simultaneously or in different sequence? So your weight should actually be shifting to your lead side in the last part of the backswing, and then the squat starts in the start of the downswing, right? So typically about halfway back here, so about right in this area, this is when my weight's going to start shifting into my lead side, right? And I'm going to continue to move my weight into my lead side as I start my downswing. But that squat move, right? I never mind this. This doesn't have anything to do with anything. I just had this out earlier because I was demonstrating a drill to a student. But that squat move, and really the squat move is really just flexing the hips, right? So I'm here, I'm shifting my weight to my lead side, and then I'm going to start my downswing by flexing those hips and then turning through. So yeah, it's not a simultaneous thing. The weight shift starting earlier, weight shift starting in the last part of the backswing, and then the squat is starting right in the start of the downswing. So Steve W says, I want to proceed with the Tospigal system. Should I do level 1 for each of the 5 fundamentals and then level 2 for each, etc.? Or should I do all levels starting with fluid spine and then proceed to complete all levels for the next fundamental in order? Both of those ways are totally fine. So I'd say dealer's choice on that, either one of them. So I just choose which one you want to do and then just go with it. But yeah, either one is going to be effective for going through the Tospigal system. All right, keep the questions coming. I'm going to refill my drink while y'all come up with questions. Here we go. Let me refresh this, make sure there's no new questions in there at the moment. Sometimes it's not refreshed and then it's not showing the most current stuff. So just want to make sure. Yep. So we've answered everything so far today. So if you got questions, feel free to post them. If not, no worries. If you're just hopping on the office hours, I'm just waiting for a question to be asked. So if you got questions, now's the time to ask. If not, no worries. All right. So Joe Shack says, "Hello Q. When practicing for every high drive, I will hit 2 low line drives. What should I focus on?" Well, you have to investigate to see what's actually making the ball go low. It could be the strikes on the face. If you hit it lower on the face, the ball will go lower. So I'd maybe get some foot power spray, Dr. Scholl's Odor X. There's also stuff called Strike Spray. I think that works the best for the driver. Spray it on the club face, and you can see, you know, if you're, because that's more than likely what's going on. Because usually the other thing that changes, like the trajectory of a shot, is going to be loft. That's kind of the main thing. So you're not usually going to have your loft that you're applying to impact. You really isn't going to change that much from swing to swing, right? If your intention is the same, it's not going to change from swing to swing. Now, if you're doing things to try to hit it low and doing things to try to hit it high, you're intentionally doing things, right? That can change the trajectory of the shot for sure. But if your intention is to hit it high every single time, and sometimes it goes high and sometimes it doesn't, then more than likely what's going on is it's just poor strikes on the face. You're probably just hitting it low on the face. So I would investigate, kind of see what's going on there, spray the foot powder spray on the face, and then go from there. If you're just hopping on to the office hours, I'm just waiting for a question to be asked. So if you got questions, feel free to ask. If not, no worries. All right. So I don't take divots. Is there something wrong with my swing? Not necessarily. So basically, what it comes down to is if you're making ball first contact and you're making center face contact and you're not taking divots, that's totally fine. And that is possible, but you have to have a lie where the ball is kind of sitting up on the grass like it's on a tee. If it's like that, you may never ever take a divot. You know, when I grew up on a little 9-hole course in a small town. It wasn't the best conditioned course. It wasn't like Augusta National or anything like that. You know, there were patchy spots in the fairways and things like that. So as a local rule, we were able to kind of roll the ball around to get like a preferred lie. I think they said, you know, you could roll the ball like a scorecard length or something like that. Now, of course, nobody was out there with a scorecard making sure exactly. Really, what it came down to is you just got it up on the grass, so so that way, if you're in the fairway, you're not being penalized, right? You get a good lie if you're in the fairway. So so in that situation, when you're putting it up on the grass, you're going to give yourself a nice fluffy lie where the ball's sitting up on the grass like it's up on a tee. And in that situation, you may not take a divot. It's very possible to hit a flushed golf shot in the center of the face and make ball first contact while doing that. Now, if you're in a lie where it's it's not sitting up on the grass like it's on a tee, and you're always thinning the ball, you're chunking the ball, right? And when you do take a divot, it's a chunk. Then in that situation, yes, there's probably something in your swing that you may need to correct to do that. So the first thing that I would look at is your ball position, right? I find that a lot of people who don't take divots tend to have the ball position pretty far forward because it's kind of a vicious cycle. Because people who don't take divots tend to hit the ball thin, and when you hit the ball thin, you tend to hit it lower, right? Because when you hit it thin, the face will twist down, and that will make the ball launch lower, right? And also, when you hit the ball thin, you may not be getting all of the strike on the face, and on the leading edge here, there's a lot less loft, right? Whereas if you're on the face, that's where the loft is. So the ball is going to come out lower when you do that. So a lot of people in their mind are like, I've been hitting the ball low, so I'm going to put the ball more forward and kind of hang back to try to help the ball up in the air. The problem is that just makes the problem worse. You just thin it even more. It may lead to chunking and topping. So in order to be able to make ball first contact and then really make nice, solid center face contact and then make contact high enough on the face to hit the ball solidly, we need the bottom of the swing to be in front of the ball a few inches, 3 or 4 inches, and then a little bit below the ball. But like I said, if the ball is sitting up on the grass, there's like it's on a tee, and there's some air underneath that ball. If the bottom of your swing is a little bit below the ball, you may not be getting into the dirt very much underneath the grass. You're just kind of taking off the little bit of grass that's right there, so you won't really have a divot. So that's why I'm saying, like, just because you don't take divots doesn't mean there's something wrong with your swing. But if you're hitting it thin and chunking it, then you probably need to do something in your swing to make it a little better. So, like I said, moving the ball position more toward the middle or just forward of the middle of the stance for shots off the ground can definitely help with that. Because remember, the bottom of the swing arc needs to be in front, right? If we start hanging back, then the bottom of my swing arc is going to be back here. If I push the ball position way forward, the bottom of my swing arc is going to be back here. So if I can get that bottom of my swing arc to be in front of the ball, I can hit it solidly. If I can get it a little bit below the ball, I can hit it solidly. So ball position is one. Another one is hip sway. So if I really sway my hips to my right, I'm going to have a hard time getting the bottom of my swing forward. So I want to have a little bit of a move to my right side to start the backswing. But as soon as I get my weight on my trail side, I want to start pushing my hip back and around and staying more centered between my feet with my hips. I don't want to slide my hips, especially get my trail hip outside my right ankle. It's going to make it almost impossible. So if you do struggle with that, a good drill that I like is the chair drill, where you put it on the outside of your hip. You set up with it, touching your hip here. You start the backswing with a little bit of a nudge into that chair. As you continue the backswing, you'll be just touching the chair, right? And then as we get up to the top, we're going to get a little bit of a separation from that chair, about a ball width, a hand thickness from that chair. So that can really help if you're struggling with getting that low point more forward. Another reason would be that we're not shifting our weight to our lead side at the right time. So if I'm going up to the top of the swing and then I shift my weight at the top of the swing to my lead side, a lot of times that's too late. So we just don't end up getting to our lead side very well. So what we really want to be doing is we want to move into our trail side, and then about halfway back, we actually want to start getting our momentum moving to our lead side. That's why we would separate from that chair a little bit. Another good drill that you can do is a step drill. I know a lot of people have probably said, do you have a different drill you can do? I know that a lot of people have a love-hate relationship with this drill. And the reason is that it's difficult for some people to do, but it's difficult because we don't have the right weight shift in the swing. So once you get this down and get the weight shift down correctly, you're going to start hitting the ball a lot better. So I would, if you're someone who really struggles with the step drill, I would work on it to get to where you can do it correctly. So that way you know, it's just going to make you a better player. So don't avoid things that are going to, you know, make you a better player. So the way that you do the step drill, you start with your feet together. I like to kind of point the club in front. We're not hitting a ball when we do this. That might be part of the problem as well. When people struggle with it because they're trying to hit a ball doing it. Don't do it with a ball. Do it without the ball. So that way we can get the feeling of the proper weight shift and sequencing. All right. So I'm going to start with the club in front. I'm going to put pressure into my trail foot, and then I'm going to throw the club back. As I throw the club back and as my hands clear my body, I'm going to start my step forward. And I'm going to make sure that I get my momentum moving forward. The biggest mistake that I see people make with this drill, there's actually two of the biggest mistakes. One, the first biggest mistake is that they start the step too late. I want you to start that step as soon as your hands clear your body. That step should be starting, right? So the timing of the step is what a lot of people get wrong. A lot of people either start the step right away, which is better than doing it too late. And then the other thing is they won't start the step until they get up here, right? So it's got to be as soon as those hands start clear the body here. And when I say clear the body, I mean this is in front of my body, and then still in front of my body, still in front of my body. Now I just have a little bit of a space between my hands and my body. That's when I'm going to start the step, right? The other mistake that I see is people do what I call dipping the toes in the water. So they'll be here and they'll start the step, but they go like this, where they keep their body back, and then they go up to the top, and then they start. That's really the same thing as waiting to the top of the swing to get there, because you're starting a step, but you're just doing it from here, right? So we got to make sure that our momentum is moving forward. A good way to think about it is to imagine that your belt buckle, right, your belly button, whatever, is staying in the middle between your feet, right? So if my feet start spreading, right, my feet start moving apart from each other, my belly button's got to go that way. My center of mass has to go that way, right? If I dip my toes in the water, well, look, my belly button's kind of over pretty close to over my right foot. I'm staying over here. So that's a big part of it. So get to where you can do that, do the proper sequencing, brush the ground, and then you can go from there to normal practice swings, getting the same sensation. Then you can go from there to like clipping a tee, hitting the ground in the right spot. Then you can go from there to adding the golf ball. That's a good progression to work through if you're struggling with that. So those are kind of the main things that I would look at if you're struggling with taking divots. But like I said, if you play like I did when I was younger, preferred lies, and you just fluff every single ball and you set it up every single time, you're hitting it ball first contact, center face contact, no divots, no worries, not a big deal. But if you're chunking, thinning, and stuff like that, I would recommend the stuff that I just talked about. All right, let's see if we got any new questions. All right, so Joe goes on to say, thanks, progressing nicely with my 7-iron to wedges, gaining consistency, but need help with my longer irons. Any adjustments when I use the longer irons? Not really. It's really the same thing. You know, I would hit that's really a big mistake that I see a lot of people make, is that when they get to the longer clubs, they tend to try to hit them a lot different than they hit a 7-iron. you're going to hit your 5-iron the same way that you hit your 7-iron. It's the same exact way. Now, if you want to, you could move the ball position slightly forward. But if you're struggling with hitting behind the ball, hitting it thin, or chunking it, I would leave the ball position in the same place. So play it the same exact way. Heck, pretend like it's a 7-iron, right? Now, longer clubs by nature are going to be more difficult, right? So I wouldn't, my expectation is, if I hit my 9-iron 100 times, right, and I hit my 5-iron 100 times, or even my 7-iron 100 times, and then my 5-iron 100 times, right? My proximity to the hole with my 7-iron is going to be much better. I'm going to be much more consistent with it because it's a shorter club, right? I have more loft on it, so it's not going to go as far, right? I'm going to tend to be more consistent with it. It's not, because one thing we have to think about is, 2 degrees offline on a 150-yard shot is going to be much closer to your target line than 2 degrees offline for a 250-yard shot or a 200-yard shot, right? Because the longer it goes, the more it's going to keep moving away from that target line. So a lot of people tend to feel like they're much more inconsistent with the 5-iron. Really, they might be just as consistent or slightly, less consistent. But the reality is that when you hit it offline, it just, because the ball's going farther, it's just going to go further offline once you start it offline a little bit. So it's very, very normal. So there really isn't any big adjustment you need to make. You really swing it the same way. And then, we just have to understand that because of the nature of the club being a little bit longer, it is going to be a little bit more difficult to hit. If you think about an extreme set, imagine your 5-iron was 10 feet long, right? Well, yeah, it would be way more difficult to control that and be able to hit that in the center of the face, be able to make ball first contact, be able to do the things that make you consistent, right? To hit the ball solidly, it'd be much more difficult to do that. So that's the same thing that's happening. It's just on a much smaller scale because, what your 5-iron might be an inch longer than your 7-iron or something like that, right? It's not a huge difference, but it's enough to make it a little bit more difficult. And also with the lowering the loft as well, that's going to make the ball go farther, which again is going to make it a little bit more difficult to, it's going to move farther away from that target line the farther it goes. All right. How do you hit the driver consistently straight? Well, it comes down to face and path. So what I mean by that is the direction the club face is pointing at impact in relationship to the direction the club head is moving, right? So if we just want to do a quick lesson on ball flight, let's imagine that this PVC pipe here, let's say this is my target line, all right? So this is, if you extend this all the way out, it'd be going right through my target out in the distance, right? So now let's say that this alignment stick here, let's say that this represents my club path, right? So my club path is going out to the right. And then we could say that this guy here represents the club face, right? So this is the direction the club face is pointing at impact, right? So what we can see here is that my club path is in to out, right? It's going out to the right. It's going from inside the target line to outside the target line. My club face is open to my target line, but closed to my path. The ball flight that this is going to produce is a ball that starts to the right. It's going to start in the direction of my club face, and then it's going to curve away from my club path, right, which is out to the right. So it's going to curve to the left. So this is going to produce a draw that starts a little bit to the right of the target and then draws back toward the target. All right. Now let's say that my club face was like this, right? It was in line with my target. Well, then what's going to happen there is my club path is the same here. My ball is going to start in the direction of my club face, right? So it's going to start in the direction of the target, and then it's going to curve away from the target. It's going to keep curving to the left. So that would be a ball that's going to start at the target, and then it's going to draw a little bit more because there's a bigger difference between my face and my path there. You know, if you were to put numbers on it, we could have said, okay, my path before was 4 degrees into out, my face was 2 degrees open, right? So that produced a ball that started about 2 degrees to the right and curved to the left. Now, let's say my path is 4 degrees to the right. My face is 0, right, because it's in line with the target. That ball is going to start 0 degrees. It's going to start at the target, and then it's going to curve more because there's a 4-degree difference now between my face and my path. So it's going to go left of my target. And if we do this, and we can keep going on that, now let's say that my face is 4 degrees to the left, right? Well, now what's going to happen is my ball is going to start left, and now I have an 8-degree difference between my face and my path. That's going to create more curve. So my ball is going to start left, and then it's going to curve even more to left. So that's going to be a big hook, right? Now, if we want to go on the other side of that, let's say I'm like this, right? Let's say that my club face is now pointing way to the right. So now let's say that my club face is 8 degrees open. Well, my path is still 4 degrees to the right. So that ball is going to start to the right, and it's going to curve away from my path. So it's going to curve even more to the right. And because there's a 4-degree difference between my face and my path, it's going to have a decent amount of curvature on that. So how we hit the ball consistently straight is we have to have these things lined up with each other, right? I need to have my path at the target. I need to have my face in the direction of the target. The closer we can get those to 0, the more likely that you're going to hit the ball dead straight. So how do we do this? Well, the way that we do this is we train hitting different ball flights. And I know that may seem silly. Like if you want to hit the ball straight, why wouldn't you train to only hit the ball straight? Well, the problem with that is that that's the hardest shot in golf to hit, is a dead straight shot. And also, what if it gets off a little bit, right? You don't really have a way to kind of hone that in. So the way that you work on this is you work on it by hitting different shot shapes. And this has actually been proven through many studies to help you to learn how to do things faster. They actually did this with free throws. You know, people who really struggle with free throws, they would have them shoot the free throws from ahead of the line, further back behind the line, to the right side, to the left side. And in doing that, that helped them to gain a better awareness, and they were able to shoot free throws a lot better. So what that means is that to learn how to hit the ball consistently straight, we actually need to learn how to curve the ball and to be able to make adjustments to be able to get the ball flight that we want. So what I would do in your practice is I would practice hitting draws in face. Now, on the course, that does not mean you have to work the ball both ways. If you're great at working the ball both ways, then by all means do that. I would say the overwhelming majority of tour players mostly hit just one shot shape off the tee. They have a shot shape that they're comfortable with. They might work their irons, but most tour players you're going to see are going to have one shot shape. So for example, like Dustin Johnson, right? He hits almost exclusively fades only. That's what he's most comfortable with. He can hit a draw, but what I'm saying is that you can do exactly what Dustin Johnson does and hit only fades out there on the course. But what I would recommend doing is I would practice hitting draws and fades. Because if you let's say that you only hit fades, right? Well, when things get a little bit off whack, you end up getting that two-way miss, which is going to be, if you're a fader, the two-way miss is typically going to be a pull or an overfade or a slice, right? So if we can learn how to draw the ball, right, and get the face close to the path, then we can learn and get the path going out to the right and then get the face close to the path. If that two-way miss goes off, we know how to swing from the inside. We know how to get the face closed, and we can correct that very, very quickly, right? So what I would recommend doing just as a drill is to do a 3-shot drill where you use a win, pass, lose, stay mentality. So what that means is if you are successful in the task, then you pass and you move on to the next task. If you're unsuccessful, then you have to make an adjustment and redo the task with the goal to be successful, right? So you can start with whatever shot shape you want. You just have to make it clear what your intent is. What I mean by that is you can't just tee up the ball and hit a fade and just say, okay, that counts as my fade, and then move on to the next one. You have to declare kind of an intention, right? And let's say you declare a draw and you hit a fade on that first one. That's unsuccessful. You need to make an adjustment. You need to get the face more closed or the path more from the inside or whatever it might be, right? So what I would do is I tee up the ball, 3-shot drill. You're going to hit a fade, you're going to hit a draw, and you're going to hit a straight shot. Now, the straight shot does not have to be dead straight, but I would say less than a few yards of curvature is what you'd want to be looking for. All right. So, and it has to be solid. These can't be, way off the toe, way off the heel, pop-ups or anything like that. These have to be solid center face strikes. Otherwise, it won't count. All right. So let's say I step in here and I want to hit a draw. That's why I'm declaring. And I'm going to say, in order to be successful with this, I'm going to hit a draw. It has to be within 10 yards of my center line on either side. So I'm going to set up an alignment stick, a target out in the distance. It has to be within 10 yards either side of that target, and it has to be solidly struck. And it has to match the ball flight that I'm looking for. So if I'm going to set up to hit a draw, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up with my stance a little bit closed to my target line, That's going to help me to swing the club more from the inside. Because remember, I need to swing from the inside to get a draw. I'm going to strengthen my grip just a little bit to help me to get the club face closed. And I'm just going to make my normal swing from there. And I'm going to get that ball to start to the right and curve to the left. That's going to produce a nice draw ball flight, right? So let's say I do that one and I get it to start to the right, but it doesn't draw back. It just kind of blocks out to the right, and then I miss my target line by 10 yards. Well, then I'm going to make an adjustment. I failed, so I need to try the draw again. I'm going to make an adjustment. I'm going to get that face a little bit more close. So I'm going to take a little bit of a stronger grip, right? A little bit of a stronger grip. And let's say I go through it again, and I hit it off the heel, right? And I don't hit it solid. So I'm going to give it another try and really focus on trying to hit the ball in the middle of the face, right? And I'm just going to hit it until I get it correct. I'm going to keep making adjustments until I get it correct, right? Now, this doesn't mean that these are going to be bad drives. Like these might be drives that you can get away with out on the course, right? But it needs to fit the drill that you're going for, right? So let's say I get it on the next one. I'm at 3 total attempts. Now I'm going to go to the other side and I'm going to do the fade, right? So for the fade, I'm going to set up with my stance a little bit open. I'm going to take a little bit of a weaker grip to help my face be open, right? So that way I can get my face open to that path that's going to create the fade, right? I'm going to make my swing, and let's say on that one, I get it, right? I get it on the first try. We're good to go. So now I'm up to 4 total attempts, 3 for the draw, 1 for the fade. Now I'm going to go for the straight one. And like I said, for the straight one, I'm just looking for a ball to be solidly struck within 10 yards of either side of my target line, of my target out in the distance. And I want minimal curvature. If it curves a little bit, I'm okay with it. It's not a big deal. Like I said, the dead straight shot, that's the hardest shot to hit. Don't hold yourself to that kind of standard to have 0 curve on the ball. If you have a few yards of curve on the ball, I'm going to totally accept that. And whether it's a fade or a draw, a little bit of a curvature, I'm going to totally accept that. I just don't want a ton of curvature. So let's say for that, I'm going to set up with my feet, square to my target line. And these adjustments might be different for you. You might find that you hit the ball straighter with a little bit of close or a little bit of open stance. That's part of the beauty of doing this drill as well, is you're going to find the adjustments that you need to make to be able to hit the ball the way that you want to, right? So that's why this is also a really, really good drill to help you to consistently hit it straight, right? So for me, I'm going to set up with my feet square, with my target line here. I'm going to set up with what I feel is the grip that helps me to square up the face, which would be a fairly neutral to maybe slightly strong grip. And again, I'm visualizing my shot as well. And through all this, I want you to be going through your routine just like you would on the course, right? And visualization of these shots is a big one. So let's say, I do this and I go through it and I pull it a little bit, right? Well, if I pulled it, that means that I swung over the top a little bit, right? So what I need to do is I need to feel like I'm swinging a little bit more from the inside. So I'm going to do some rehearsals and I'm going to make some adjustments, that adjustment here to help me to be able to hit the ball straight. So let's say I hit the next one. I definitely got the path working from the inside, but it overdrew. Let's say it drew like 5 yards. It's just a little bit too much curve. So I'm going to swing from the inside again, just like I did, but I'm going to take a little bit of a weaker grip because I got the face a little bit too close, right? Or, it could be something, if you felt like you executed the swing correctly and it didn't turn out that you wanted, then it might be a grip adjustment. But it also, what could have happened was I just rolled my hands over too much through contact. So maybe on the next one, I'm going to feel like my hands are a little less active through contact, and that's going to help me to straighten it out a little bit. So let's say on the next one, I straighten it out and I get the shot that I want. So it took me 3 attempts. So I got 3 attempts on the draw, 1 attempt on the fade, and then 3 attempts on the straight shot. That's a total of 7 attempts. So now what I have is I have a score that I want to beat. And I'm going to do this drill again. This could be a drill that you can do every range session, or you can do it multiple times throughout a range session. But I'm telling you, if you go out there and you do this and you make the adjustments and you understand what you need to do to get the ball to go what you want, you're going to start hitting it more consistently straight. The people that tend to struggle with not being able to hit the ball consistently straight will tend to set up to the ball and they're just swinging and hoping, right? There's no intention, right? Swing with the intention. Visualize your shot. Make the adjustments throughout the round to get, because really it's not necessarily about hitting it consistently dead straight. It's about not having a huge dispersion. That's really what it comes down to. So if you do this drill, you can shrink that dispersion down to where your bad shots are hopefully more playable, right? And then you can keep going from there. All right, so Leo P says, using launch monitor video, I am in to out with path. I am nice and shallow. Problem is from P6 to P7, my right arm is internally rotates and ruins all good stuff that preceded. Any good drills, tips help? Well, it should be internally rotating. Yeah, your right arm should be internally rotating to there. It would be very, very difficult. It'd be almost impossible to not have your arm internally rotate, your trail arm. So that I wouldn't say that that's a problem. So what I would say is, what are your ball flight and contact issues, right? Because if you're coming down nice and shallow, it's like, are you not squaring up the face? Are you not hitting it in the middle of the face? When you come down, every single golfer in the world, and when you stay in P6 to P7, those of you who aren't familiar, P6 is when the club is parallel to the ground in the downswing. P7 is impact. So he's saying from here to here, his trail arm is internally rotating. Everyone's is. So that's not really a problem. Shashern C says, with a strong grip, it seems harder or it takes more wrist movement to get my left wrist in a flat bowed position during the downswing as compared to a neutral left hand to get the knuckles down position during the strike. Any help or comments? Yeah, so if you have a stronger grip, you don't need to bow your wrist because that's just going to make the club face too closed, right? You only need to really bow your wrist if you have a weak grip. If you have a neutral grip, you can bow your wrist a little bit, but you better have some shaft lean. You better have quite a bit of shaft lean to be able to go along with that, because otherwise the club face is just going to get too close. So typically the way that it goes is weaker grip is going to pair well with bowed wrist angles, right? Because that's going to get the club face in a better position. A neutral grip is going to go well with more flat wrist angles. A strong grip is going to go well with slightly cupped wrist angles, right? So for some examples, weak grip, strong wrist angles, right? So bowed lead wrist, that's going to be like a Victor Hovland, right? A Colin Morikawa, a John Rahm, right? These are all golfers that have very weak grips, right? They're like this, where their lead hand's more on the side, thumb going down the top of the shaft. And at the top of the swing, you're going to see some bowing, right? Because that gets that club face in a better position. For the neutral grip folks, that's going to be more like Tiger, Adam Scott. These are golfers where if you look at my thumbs kind of going, it's not going down the top. It's more in this position right here, right? My trail hand is matching. So when I go up to the top of the swing, I'm going to have flatter wrist angles. My club face is really in the same position, right? It's just a matter of matching up my grip and my wrist angles. A strong grip, right? That's going to be where my lead hand's more on top. That's going to match up with a little bit cupped. Now, we can't go crazy and have it really, really cupped, but a little bit cupped, you can see how that club face is still in a good position. An example would be like Matthew Fitzpatrick, Brendan Steele. Like, these are golfers that have very strong grips, and they have a little bit of cup in their wrists. So I think what might be going on is you're having difficulty because your brain might be saying, with that strong grip, if you're trying to bow that wrist, my club face is too closed, and it's going to be very, very difficult. You might try to do something to try to compensate for that. And I see that sometimes. So I see some golfers who have the really strong grip, and then, they hear. So it's just like a combination of things that we hear that we should be doing, right? But it's really about the matchups, right? So if I have a really strong grip, that's what, we're telling you that you should have a strong grip, right? Because most people struggle with getting the club face close, right? And we're also saying in some instances it might be good to bow your wrist. But if you do both of those, if I have a strong grip, right, and then I also bow my wrist, well, look at how close that club face is, right? It's super close. I'm coming in and I'm almost hitting the ball like a hammer, right? Whereas if I have a strong grip and I'm coming in more like this, where my wrist is more cupped, then my club face is more square, right? So strong grip is going to go well with a little bit of cup in the wrist as you're coming down, right? So here's what I recommend doing. I recommend using the grip that matches the wrist angles that you do naturally, right? So if you look at your golf swing and you see that you naturally just have a flat wrist, then a neutral grip is probably going to be a good place for you to be, right? If you look at the top of your swing and you see some cupping in that wrist, right, a stronger grip is probably going to be a good place for you to be. If you look at the top of your swing and this would be pretty rare, but let's say that you naturally have some bow in the wrist, then a weaker grip would probably be a good place for you to be. So I would play around with that and you'll probably be more successful. So Lee OP says, I'm hitting pull draws and my right arm comes over out, as opposed to how Clay and good players seem to have external look at impact. Hovland seems to really have a bent right arm elbow at impact. Yeah, so that's a different thing, right? So everyone is internally rotating, right? What you're talking about is you're coming in and you're probably standing up out of it, and your right arm's kind of getting on top, and you're getting the hands to kind of roll over too much, and that face is getting close, right? So what I would work on is getting that club to release more out in front, right? Now, it's hard for me to say exactly what you need to do that, besides, really just working through the Top Speed Golf system. If I could see your swing, I could give you some better advice. If you're interested in signing up for the online lessons, I can tell you exactly what you need to do to get in that better place. But one thing that you can do is a stick drill. So take an alignment stick, put it down the shaft, right? And if you flip and do what you're talking about, that's going to whack you in the side, right? So if you can get to where, you're turning through, right, and this isn't whacking in the side, that you'll be in better shape for it. So the stick drill would be something that I would recommend that you do. Leo P says exactly everything is great until just before impact. Yeah, I mean that's possible. I mean, odds are you're probably doing that as a reaction to something else that's happening in the swing. But yeah, it's hard to say without seeing your swing for sure. But the stick drill would be one that would help you to get that in a better spot. All right, we got a few minutes left here. Leo PSA, it's like just before impact, someone shoots a dart in my, you know what? Yeah, so it's probably, part of part of what a lot of people do to shallow. You mentioned that you're shallowing out the club nicely. One thing that a lot of people do to shallow out the club is they stand up, right? So if I'm like this and then I do that, right? You see how that shallows out the club, right? And then if I do that, I kind of have to. I'm not going to be able to get into that Hovland looking position. I'm not going to be able to get like this, right? If my hips are moving forward, my chest is moving back, right? So I would work on possibly, like I said, this is a possibility of something you may need to work on. Is getting that club shallower earlier, right? So getting it shallow and then keeping it shallow all the way down, so that way and staying in your posture as you're coming down. Because if you do this, right, you have to kind of bring that right arm over, right? Whereas if I'm like this, right, if I'm in my posture, but that only works if I'm shallow. If I'm coming down steep and then I go in like I'm just going to come down even more steeply, right? So I have to have the club shallow to get that to work. No problem, Leo. Glad to help. All right, we got about 5 minutes left. If we have any more questions.
All right, we'll go ahead and wrap it up right there. Thanks everyone for joining me. We'll be back here Tuesday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. No office hours on Monday for Memorial Day. So just a heads up there. We will return Tuesday, 11 a.m. Everybody have a great rest of your weekend, and I will talk to you all next time.